Good evening, everybody. Another Sunday evening at Snowy River Zen Center. I hope everyone is well. This evening, I'd like to talk about the quality of being. The quality of being, that's a phrase that Suzuki Roshi uses in one of the sections of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And I want to try to express my thoughts, how I understand what he's getting at when he talks in the way that he talks. So first, let me share with you how he opens that section. And the title of the section is The Quality of Being. So if you have a copy of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, it should be pretty easy to find. So he starts by saying, the purpose of Zazen is to attain the freedom of our being, physically and mentally. That's the first sentence. The purpose of Zazen, our seated meditation practice, is to attain the freedom of our being. So that's an interesting question. What does he mean by freedom? Both physically and mentally. Now the next sentence, according to Dogen Zenji, every existence is a flashing into the vast phenomenal world. Each existence is another expression of the quality of being itself. So I'll say that again. According to Dogen Zenji, every existence is a flashing into the vast phenomenal world. Each existence, each flashing, is another expression of the quality of being itself. So this is Dogen Zenji's way of saying something that I've brought up many times. I brought it up last week with the Chinese words Ziran and Zhaohua. They're kind of interchangeable. They relate to the Taoist understanding of how the universe happens now, always now. It flashes into being now. It's always changing, and it's always coming fresh into being now. And there's no past, no future. There's this arising, this becoming. Arising, becoming. That was a phrase that Stephen Heine used in his book. And so a flashing into the phenomenal world is that understanding of the manifestation of the coming into being of reality, of the cosmos. That is happening now. You know, I said last week, Genesis now, you know, the movie Apocalypse Now, well, Genesis now. You know, creation didn't happen some long time ago, like winding up a clock, and then it's just ticking mechanistically through natural law from then to now and on into the future. No, it's coming into being now. And if you know, Dogen Zenji says that firewood does not become ash, and ash does not return to firewood. Firewood is a phenomenal expression, complete itself. Ash is a phenomenal expression, complete itself. That's the same point, that ash is fully ash. It's here now. This is just this. It doesn't go anywhere. It's now. Like this kotsu, the stick. It's here now. It's not in the past. How could it be? It's here. It's not in the future. It's here. It's arising into being now. And if you contemplate that, if you ponder that, you know, it's in a sense undeniably true. And it's at least is equally valid a way of conceiving of being as the linear time notion, at least as valid, because, you know, this is here now. It's not in the past. It's flashing into being, in a sense, right here, right now. You know, we don't have a room where we store the past. You know, the past is nothing. Everything is now, arising now. So that is that statement that Suzuki Roshi is quoting of Dogen Zenji. Just to make sure I get it verbatim. According to Dogen Zenji, every existence is a flashing into the vast phenomenal world. Each existence is another expression of the quality of being itself. So the quality of being is related to this Zeron, this spontaneously arising cosmos that's right here, right now, ever changing. You know, the spontaneity is always changing, but it's always coming into being. The rising, becoming. It's a very good phrase for it by Stephen Heine. I want to try to look at this notion of this flashing into the vast phenomenal world, the arising, becoming of being now, this moment outside of linear time, Ziran, Zhaohua, those Chinese words. I want to look at it from a different perspective to try to get a more nuanced, a more deep feeling for what this means in Buddha Dharma. So I want to share with you the metaphor of Indra's net. The metaphor of Indra's net. It originates, I believe, in the Avatamsaka Sutra. I think that was its genesis. I'm going to read from David Loy's book, Lack and Transcendence, where he's actually quoting Francis Cook's book on Huayan Buddhism. That's the school of Buddhism. Oh, Nate, I'm sorry, can we turn it on? This doesn't have backlit illumination. Excuse us for a second. Huayan Buddhism is the school of Buddhism. It's already at? Yep. Oh, okay. Old age lies, I guess. Huayan Buddhism is the Buddhism that developed relating to the Avatamsaka Sutra in China. And some teachers were both in China. Some teachers, a few teachers, shared Dharma lineage with both Huayan and Zen. So there was some interface in China with the two schools. And Dogen uses Avatamsaka material quite a bit. Anyhow, this is the metaphor of Indra's net. And this is a metaphorical description of the nature of being arising on each moment. You know, what the structure of being arising on each moment is. And so here's Francis Cook quoting from the sutra, or maybe rephrasing the sutra, I'm not sure. But he says, far away in the heavenly abode of the great god Indra, there is a wonderful net that has been hung by some cunning artificer in such a manner that it stretches out infinitely in all directions. So we got this net, like a fishing net. But it goes infinitely in all directions. Not just, three-dimensional net, I would imagine. Or maybe more. How many dimensions are there? But this net stretches out infinitely in all directions, in accordance with the extravagant taste of deities. The artificer has hung a single glittering jewel in each eye of the net, a single glittering jewel in each intersection of the net. They've hung this jewel in each little, where the things come together, each one is a jewel. And since the net itself is infinite in all directions, the jewels are infinite in number. So this jewel net of infinite is everywhere, infinite, limitless net of jewels. There hang the jewels, glittering like stars of the first magnitude, a wonderful sight to behold. If we now arbitrarily select one of these jewels for inspection and look closely at it, we will discover that in its polished surface, there are reflected all the other jewels in the net. You look at any jewel and you look at it and you can see reflected all the jewels, these infinite jewels, you see them all. infinite in number. Not only that, but each of the jewels reflected in this one jewel is also reflecting all of the other jewels. So that then there is an infinite reflecting process occurring. It symbolizes a cosmos in which there is an infinitely spreading interrelationship. So infinitely spreading interrelationship. So that's how this moment arises. Interrelationship, dependent co-arising, pratitya samutpada. Everything implicates everything else. It arises in relation together, not separate. Everything implies everything else. Everything is conditioned by everything else. An infinitely repeated interrelationship among all the members of the cosmos. This relationship is said to be one of simultaneous mutual identity and mutual intercausality. So that's the classical image of Indra's net. It's a metaphor for, as I said, dependent co-arising, how we are each other. That's how I like to put it sometimes. We are each other. We're not separate, discrete beings, but we participate in bringing each other into being. And we can't exist except in this dependently co-arisen interrelationship. So later in this book, David Loy brings up another image, a musical image, to describe this relationship, this Indra's net. And he starts by quoting another author talking about another person. The author is Rufus Jones. And this is a book, I think, this is a book on mysticism of like medieval Europe. That's I'm not sure if it's exclusively German, but anyway, this is Jacob Bohm that Rufus Jones is writing about. And Loy has some commentary about this. And it's in theistic language, so go with it, flow with it a little bit if you can, because it's Christian mysticism. The entire manifested or outbreathed universe, that's how Bohm's, that's the phrase that actually Rufus Jones is writing to describe Bohm. The entire manifested or outbreathed universe. So that's that's right now, it's breathed out right now. Is, he says, Bohm says, the expression of the divine desire for holy sport and play. The heart of God enjoys this myriad play of created beings, all tuned as the infinite strings of a harp for contributing to one mighty harmony, and altogether uttering and voicing the infinite variety of the divine purpose. So all the beings of the universe are like strings on a harp, and together they're singing, the music of the spheres, if you want to use a non-theistic terminology, the music of the cosmos, the music of God, the one mighty harmony, and altogether uttering and voicing the infinite variety of the divine purpose. Each differentiated spirit or light or property or atom of creation has a part to play in the infinite sport or game or harmony. And now Jones quotes Bohm, so that in God there might be a holy play throughout the universe, as a child plays with his mother, and that so the joy in the heart of God might be increased, or again, so that each being may be a true sounding string in God's harmonious concert. And so Loy goes on to say, Bohm describes the divine melody as the powerful play of eternal generation. Then he says, this extended this extended musical metaphor, is so appropriate because music has no ulterior motive and no goal. It is tathatha, suchness. It just is. Music just is. When it goes somewhere, it is not, for example, the sonata form. It is not for the sake of getting there, but for the sake of going there. You know, or the fastest player would win. But no, it's it's the arising now sound that is spontaneously changing. It's when you're with the music, you're with this notion of how the universe manifests. It's rising now. The sound is now. It's happening now, and it's changing and evolving. And in being with the changes is what gives you the music, not how quickly you can get to the final quota. So that's what it means. It is. It just is. It is tathatha. When it goes somewhere, I just said that word. I can. Then he says, I can think of no better temporal analogy to complement. I can think of no better temporal analogy to complement the spatial metaphor of Indra's net, the mutual interpenetration of musical instruments in the harmonic play of a symphony concert. So he offers this musical allusion from Jacob Bohm as a complement to Indra's net. And the musical one is temporal. The Indra's net is spatial. And so, so we get being and time, and they complement one another. And I especially like the musical one because the importance of the individual in relation to the whole is more clearly evident in the musical analogy than the Indra's net analogy, where each jewel could be the same. And they are the same. If they are the same, then they're the same spatially too, because they replicate each other. And the uniqueness of each jewel is not clear in Indra's net, but in the musical example, it's quite clear. For instance, earlier this evening, I was listening to Schubert's Quintet in C major. Beautiful piece of music. Unlike most quintets, it has two cellos, two violins, a viola, and two cellos. Usually it's two violins, two violas, and one cello. And the second movement is achingly beautiful. But if you just listen to the first violin part, it goes dun da dun, dun da da dee dun, dun da dun, dun da dee dun, dun da dun, dun da da dee dun. Not a tune that you go out whistling. By itself, it doesn't cohere, it doesn't hold together. Then you have the inner voices, the second violin, viola, and one of the cellos playing harmonies. You go, slow changing harmony, which can be kind of dull by itself. And then you got the last cello, pizzicatoing the bass line, boom, 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 boom. Take any one of these voices independently, and their meaning is lost. Their meaning is determined by the relationship to the whole quintet. And then the fullness of the melody can be revealed only when, especially this particular melody, because some tunes kind of, they can stick in your head. But this Schubert's second movement, if you isolate the voices, it doesn't cohere. It's kind of incoherent. But when you put it all together, the voices implicate each other, and the meaning of the the meaning of the first violin is determined by everybody else. The violin can't arrive at the quality of its being without the other form. So, but it's unique. The first violin is not the viola. The first violin is not the cello, but the cello and the viola and the other cello and the other violin make up the quality of the first violin. its uniqueness cannot reveal its quality without the implication or the participation of the other four. And so I like that image because the IndraNet image, we could feel like we lose our individuality, we lose our uniqueness. But our uniqueness is important. But our uniqueness is not isolated from everything else. So those are the two images of IndraNet that I wanted to offer to explain in more detail, maybe more fleshed out, what this every existence is a flashing into the vast phenomenal world, and how it flashes is interdependently. Everything brings everything else into being. Everything brings everything else along. Everything else is needed for this flashing into the vast phenomenal world. Okay, let's see what else Yoshi has to say. So he goes on to say, I often see many stars early in the morning. The stars are nothing but the light which has traveled at great speed from many miles from the heavenly bodies. But for me, the stars are not speedy beings, but steady, calm, steady, and peaceful beings. We say in calmness there should be activity, in activity there should be calmness. Actually, they're the same thing. To say calmness or to say activity is just to express two different interpretations of one fact. There is harmony in our activity, and where there is harmony, there is calmness. This harmony is the quality of our being. But the quality of being is also nothing but its speedy activity. So this is an interesting paragraph, but the main takeaway for that, I think, is something I heard that Richard Baker would recite to himself like a mantra. You know, he would say, nothing to do, nowhere to go. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. While he was doing things, and while he was going places, he would be saying, nowhere to go, nothing to do. Everything's right here, right now, always. Corny saying, wherever you go, you're always where you're at. So, you know, nothing is actually happening. And things are happening. So I practice this. I do this for myself, you know, throughout the day when I'm, you know, doing various things at work or at home. I say to myself, you know, nowhere to go and nothing to do. I'm right here. And everything is utterly calm as I'm folding laundry. That really there's nothing to do even while folding the laundry. And I find it very effective to do that because, you know, what's important is not to get the laundry folded, but what's important is the quality of being itself, which is always fulfilled on each moment. Doesn't go anywhere. When we sit, we feel very calm and serene, but actually we do not know what kind of activity is going on inside our being. There is complete harmony in the activity of our physical system, so we feel the calmness in it. Even if we do not feel it, the quality is there. So for us, there is no need to be bothered by calmness or activity, stillness or movement. When you do something, if you fix your mind on the activity with some confidence, the quality of your state of mind is the activity itself. So if you fix your mind on the activity with some confidence, you know, nothing to do, nowhere to go, just washing these dishes. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. You're not trying to get them done. You're just there with the dishes. Then the quality of your being, how's he say it here? The quality of your state of mind, the quality of your being, is the activity itself. Movement is nothing but the quality of our being. When we do Zazen, the quality of our calm, steady, serene sitting is the quality of the immense activity of being itself. When we sit in Zazen, the quality of our calm, serene steady sitting is the quality of the immense activity of being itself, the whole works, the whole cosmos. Everything is just a flashing into the vast phenomenal world means the freedom of our activity and of our being. If you sit in the right manner with the right understanding, you attain the freedom of your being, even though you are just a temporal existence. Within this moment, this temporal existence does not change. Doing nothing, going nowhere. Within this moment, there is a still point, which embraces calmness and activity. The still point. They're two sides of one thing, like you said earlier. Within this moment, this temporal existence does not change. It's outside of linear time, outside of the press of time. It sounds strange, but kind of chew on it for a while. Within this now, this temporal existence does not change, does not move. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. And it's always independent from other existences. In the next moment, another existence arises, Zeron, another flashing in the phenomenal world. And we may change to something else. So change and no change are both involved here. Strictly speaking, there is no connection between I myself yesterday and I myself in this moment. This stick did not exist in the past. It's right here now. Okay. Strictly speaking, there is no connection between I myself yesterday and I myself in this moment. There's no connection whatsoever. Why? Because I require everything else to make up me, and everything else is constantly changing. So there is no, so that's why. If you practice intimately and return to where you are, you will see that nothing at all has unchanging itself. Everything is coming into being fresh and new, and everything is implicating everything else. Dogen Zenji says, charcoal does not become ash. Ash are ash. They do not belong to charcoal. They have their own past and future. They are an independent existence because they are a flashing into the vast phenomenal world. And charcoal and red hot ash, and red hot fire, are quite different existences. Black charcoal is also a flashing into the vast phenomenal world. Where there's black charcoal, there is not red hot charcoal. So black charcoal is independent of red hot charcoal. Ashes are independent of firewood. Each existence is independent. Today I am sitting in Los Altos. Tomorrow morning I shall be sitting in San Francisco. There is no connection between the I in Los Altos and the I in San Francisco. They are quite different beings. There's no quality connecting you and me. When I say you, there is no I. And when I say I, there is no you. We are independent. And I am independent. Each exists in a different moment. So it might sound like it's contradicting interdependence, but we're both independent and interdependent. We're both a violin and we're both the whole Schubert string quintet at the same time. And so right now he's saying, I am independent, So that's, I think that's a good thing to keep in mind when thinking of Indra's net. There is a uniqueness to each jewel, and the musical metaphor expresses that a little bit more readily, I think. You're independent and I am independent. Each exists in a different manner. So we each have our different perspective. We're at different places in the net, but the entire net is required for our being to come into being. But this does not mean that we are quite different beings. We are actually one and the same being. As I said, we are the same, yet different. It is very paradoxical, but actually it is so. Because we are independent beings, each one of us is a complete flashing into the vast phenomenal world. When I am sitting, there is no other person. But this does not mean I ignore you. I am completely one with every existence in the phenomenal world. So when I sit, you sit. Everything sits with me. That is our SRZC. When you sit, everything sits with you, and everything makes up the quality of your being. I am a part of you. I go into the quality of your being. So in this practice, we have absolute liberation from everything else. If you understand the secret, there is no difference between Zen practice and your everyday life. You can interpret everything as you wish. Okay. So that's Suzuki Roshi's part of the quality of being. And I think you can see how he expresses this notion of interdependence, yet uniqueness. You know, the two images that I presented from Loy of Indra's net and the musical example of interdependence, that the quality of being is not something that we possess, it's something we participate in when we, how to put it, when we see each temporal existence as a fashion right here, right now, when we're in this moment, when we abide in this moment. So that's the nature of Ziran. That's the nature of the universe coming to being now, outside of linear time. So what do we do with that? What does that call upon us to do? How to live with that? You know, first thing is to practice it. You know, since if you, when you're doing something, if you fix your mind on the activity with some confidence, the quality of your being is, the quality of your mind is the quality of being. It's your state of mind is the quality of being itself, something like that. So it means, you know, practice infinitely, return to where you are, right here, right now. When stirring the soup, just stir the soup. Another tale that apparently, for some reason or another, Richard Baker was on the road to Vegas from somewhere in the Bay Area or Tasahara, I don't know. And in pushing Vegas, he saw this sign advertising one of the casinos, and it said, "You have to be present to win. You have to be present to win." And so that's, you know, so the first step is to like be present to the arising becoming of things, you know. Like Wang Wei, we follow the stream to the source and sit there at the source of the stream and watch the place where the clouds crop up. We watch the arising and becoming. We're intimate with this arising moment. You know, practice intimately with the sound of that engine being revving on Main Street. Return to where you are. So that's one. But what else? You know, that alone is too passive. In Zen, we have an expression, an appropriate response. It comes from a koan tale. I forget the protagonists, but the question is, what is the meaning of a lifetime of teaching? An appropriate response. So we're present in the jewel. The jewel makes up our being, but how do we respond to this? We are always either reacting or responding. There's no such thing as not responding. No response is still a response in a sense. So you're either reacting, you know, where, you know, certain events occur, we're impinged upon by various things, like the engine that was revving outside a little moment ago. What do? We can react, you know, we can, with our conditioning, you know, when our buttons are pushed, we have a certain way of reacting on file in our condition, our karmic condition. When we're stroked a certain way, we react a different way. No freedom there. Or we can respond. We can exercise a response, which begs the question, how do we determine how to respond in a way that honors this understanding of the nature of being, this understanding of the quality of being? What way of participation, what way of response honor, if we believe that if this makes sense as the truest nature of our being, this interdependent web, then what does that call upon us to do, how to live? This is a book entitled Vanishing into Things. Vanishing into Things. Barry Allen is the author. Knowledge in Chinese tradition. And part of the book, he's talking about the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, or more completely Wei Wu Wei, which is sometimes translated as non-action or inaction. But if you have the complete structure of Wei Wu Wei, the action of no action, or actionless action is more accurate than inaction or non-action. Actionless action, the action of no action. So what kind of action is that? And here's his little interpretation of it. Wu Wei effectiveness, effective Wu Wei action response requires an aptitude for the subtle signs of incipience. Okay, that's half of the sentence, but as a philosopher, these sentences are pretty packed. Wu Wei effectiveness requires an aptitude for the subtle signs of incipience, an aptitude for seeing how things arise, sitting at the source of the stream and watching the clouds crop up, an aptitude for sensing how they're arising, being present to how they're manifesting. An aptitude for the subtle signs of incipience, the beginning or becoming of things. There's Zeron again, right? The beginning or becoming of things. Discerning points where development remains pliable and can be inconspicuously diverted. So something's coming up, a certain energy is coming up. How we respond will have some influence on the vector of that energy. I was thinking this evening, say we see that there's a meteor somewhere beyond the orbit of the moon, and it's heading right for us. If we see that, we say, well, if we get some rockets up there and give it a little nudge, it'll miss us completely. If we wait till it's 500 meters away, and if it's, then it's too late. So it's, you see how things arise and see what what their potentiality might be, and you say, well, how can I participate in such a way that this potentiality actually helps rather than hurts, serves, benefits beings? Something that is potentially harmful. This situation that's coming up, and there's some risk there, some danger there. Is there something I can do? So that's Wu Wei action. Such an understanding could be called foresight or foreknowledge, provided there is no connotation of divination. It is not prognostication, but merely utters the further fact. No, I'm sorry. It is not procrastination, which merely utters future fact and may be right or wrong, but not wise. The knowledge active in Wu Wei effectiveness knows how to improvise on the future, discerning and responding synergistically to its incipients. So that's Mr. Allen's understanding of Wu Wei effectiveness is that we have an aptitude for seeing the character of the arisings, of how Indra's net is coming into being right now. And so we're present, we're ready, and we respond accordingly in a harmonious way. We're not pushing an agenda, but we're dancing with the energies that are arising in a way that the quality of being can flourish. And my quality of being goes into everything. Everything goes into my quality of being. So it's one quality that is displayed like Indra's net that we're cultivating. So it's harmonious. It's non-violent. But we have a certain aspiration to be of service, to be of benefit, and we gotta wake up. We gotta see what's coming up, what's happening now, what's arising now, and how can we dance with that in such a way that our aspiration has some fulfillment. Okay. I'm going to share with you a couple of aphorisms from Martin Buber that I think also addresses, this notion. Okay, we have this understanding of everything's just a flashing of the vast phenomenal world. Everything is arising right now. What kind of expectation is placed upon us in relation to that fact? And I'm going to just extract aphorisms from this and not give you too much text. Free is the man who wills without caprice, which is, how do you respond? Do you react or do you respond? Caprice is what is reacting. Your buttons pushed, you go, and you're pulled towards something that you like, or you want to get rid of something you don't like. So you have no freedom. Free is the man who wills without caprice. He believes in the actual, which is to say, he believes in the real association of the real duality, I and you. He believes in destiny, and also that it needs him. It does not lead him, it waits for him. He must proceed towards it. I'm going to skip this part. Now, he no longer interferes. So this is the person who is present to the arising of being. Not in some abstract conceptual way, but he's awake and aware, and he can feel the arising of being, that Wu Wei efficacy that Alan was talking about. Now, he no longer interferes, nor does he merely allow things to happen. He listens to that which grows, to the way of being in the world. So that's the image. So I think Buber's evoking an image that really fits with Wu Wei effectiveness. You listen to that which is arising, so you can respond appropriately. You listen to that which grows, to the way of being, of becoming in the world. Not in order to be carried along by it, but rather in order to actualize it in the manner in which it, needing him, wants to be actualized by him, by human spirit and human deed, with human life and human death. So once again, it's kind of like the string quartet, or quintet, pardon me, Are you a good chamber music player? If you're a good chamber music player, you're not just thinking about your own part. You're listening to all five parts, and you're in balance. If you're supposed to be supporting if you're the second violin, you don't want to play louder than the first violin, who has the featured line at that time. You want to be playing at the same time with each other. You want to harmonize with each other. You want to be a good chamber music player. Well, that's an analogy for listening to that which grows, to the way of being in the world. Not in order to be carried along by it, but in order to actualize it in the way in which it, needing him, wants to be actualized by him. What does this moment require? This moment where it's not one, it's not two, where everybody's each other. What does a moment like that require? You gotta listen. How do we serve all beings? That's the Buddhist Bodhisattva vow, to save all beings, to serve all beings. But all beings is Indra's net. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 beings in this room. It's the whole works. How do we serve the whole works, all beings? You listen to, and you listen for what grows, what, you watch the plant popping up. Is the soil moist? You listen to the way you're being in the world and you respond to the needs that present themselves. So that's how to actually be part of Indra's net. You attend to the whole thing. But it's only one thing, this moment, which implies everything, but everything is present in your zazen. Everything's present in your mopping of the floor, if you're really there. And everything, the whole works, the whole cosmos, comes in to make you the quality of your being in that moment. And your participation brings it into being. But this happens, this way of living, this way of wayfaring, is only possible if you're present. You have to be present to win, which means being present at the source of creation. As wild as it may sound, that's exactly what's being talked about here. Be present at the source of creation always, to the best of your ability, and listen and respond to serve all beings. One last tale to kind of try to sum up these, that sums up what I think we've covered so far. What have we covered so far? Quick recap. We've talked about everything is simply a flashing. Each existence is a flashing of the vast phenomenal world. Everything is flashing into being right now. That's the actual nature of being, according to Zen, according to Suzuki Roshi, according to Buddha Dharma, and according to Taoism. That linear time is an abstraction, conceptual abstraction. The actual moment is outside of linear time. It's always now, rising now. That's one thing. Now, how that arises is interdependently. Everything is bringing everything else into being together. Indra's net. We're not discrete entities that can isolate ourselves and not be affected by the whole. We are affected. We'll either react or respond according to our vow, according to our aspiration, but we're implicated. We can't isolate ourselves. We need air to breathe. We need sunlight to keep from freezing. We need food, and we need spiritual interaction, human interaction, in order to thrive. So that's how things arise in this moment, interdependently. Everybody bringing each other along as one manifestation. And then the third thing, so the flashing into every existence is a flashing of the vast phenomenal world. That's one. That, it's not a linear event. It's now, always now. The source of creation is always right here, right now. Number two is the way in which it arises is interdependently. It arises as a string quartet. One thing, 5 players, this string quintet we spoke again. So it's one thing arising. It's not two, not one. It's not, how did Dogen say it in Buddha nature? It's not 100 shattered pieces. It's not many discrete entities. It's not a single iron rod. It's not one clump either. It's both and neither. So that's how it arises. The third thing, given that, how do we relate? How do we respond? How do we participate in this manifestation of being that is always happening? How do we join the dance? So And so this last reading is another example of how to join the dance. Where you go. Sorry, it wasn't an email, but I thought I had ready to pull up. That's not pulling up. Here we go. So this is a story told by Terry Dobson, Aikido master. I first heard this story told by Ram Dass. And this event occurred when this Terry Dobson is this Aikido master's name. And this event occurred when he'd been training for about 3 years. So he was still a young martial artist at that time. He tells this story when he was in Japan studying Aikido. The train clanked and rattled through the suburbs of Tokyo on a drowsy spring afternoon. Our car was comparatively empty, a few housewives with their kids in tow, some old folks going shopping. I gazed absently at the drab houses and dusty hedgerows. At one station, the doors opened, and suddenly the afternoon quiet was shattered by a man bellowing violent, incomprehensible curses. The man staggered into our car. He wore laborer's clothing, and he was big, drunk, and dirty. Screaming, he swung at a woman holding a baby. The blow sent her spinning into the laps of an elderly couple. It was a miracle she wasn't hurt. Terrified, the couple jumped up and scrambled toward the other end of the car. The laborer aimed a kick at the retreating back of the old woman, but missed as she scuttled to safety. This so enraged the drunk that he grabbed the metal pole in the center of the car and tried to wrench it out of its stanchions. I could see that on his hands were cut, that one of his hands was cut and bleeding. The train lurched ahead, the passengers frozen with fear. I stood up. I was young then, some 20 years ago, and in pretty good shape. I've been putting in a solid 8 hours of Aikido training nearly every day for the past 3 years. I like to throw and grapple people. I thought I was tough. Trouble was, my martial skill was untested in actual combat. As students of Aikido, we were not allowed to fight. Aikido, my teacher had said again and again, is the art of reconciliation. Whoever has the mind to fight has broken his connection with the universe. If you try to dominate people, you are already defeated. We study how to resolve conflicts, not how to start it. I listened to his words. I tried hard. I even went so far as to cross the street to avoid the chimpera, the pinball punks, who lounged around the train stations. My forbearance exalted me. I felt both tough and holy. In my heart, however, I wanted an absolutely legitimate opportunity whereby I might save the innocent by destroying the guilty. This is it, I said to myself, getting to my feet. People are in danger, and if I don't do something fast, they will probably get hurt. Seeing me stand up, the drunk recognized the chance to focus his rage. Aha, he roared, a foreigner. You need a lesson in Japanese manners. I held on lightly to the commuter strap overhead and gave him a slow look of disgust and dismissal. I planned to take this turkey apart, but he had to make the first move. I wanted him mad, so I pursed my lips and I blew him an insolent kiss. All right, he hollered, you're gonna get your lesson. He gathered himself up for a rush at me. A split second before he could move, someone shouted, hey! It was ear-splitting. I remember the strangely joyous, lifting quality of it, as though you and a friend had suddenly found something you'd been searching diligently for, and you suddenly stumbled upon it. Hey! I wheeled to my left. The drunk spun to his right. We both stared down at a little old Japanese man. He must have been well into his 70s, this tiny gentleman, sitting there immaculate in his kimono. He took no notice of me, but beamed delightedly at the laborer as though he had the most important, most welcome secret to share. "Come here," the old man said in a vernacular, beckoning to the drunk. "Come here and talk with me." He waved his hand lightly. The big man followed as if on a string. He planted his feet belligerently in front of the old gentleman and roared above the clacking wheels. "Why the hell should I want to talk to you?" The drunk now had his back to me. If his elbow moved to make as much as a millimeter, I'd drop him in his socks. The old man continued to beam at the laborer. "What you been drinking?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with interest. "I've been drinking sake," the laborer bellowed back. "And it's none of your business." Flecks of spittle spattered the old man. "Oh, that's wonderful," the old man said. "Absolutely wonderful. You see, I love sake too. Every night, me and my wife, she's 76, we warm up a little bottle of sake and take it out into the garden. And we sit on an old wooden bench. We watch the sun go down. And we look to see how our persimmon tree is doing. My great-grandfather planted that tree, and we worry about whether it will recover from those ice storms we had last winter. Our tree had done better than I expected, though especially when you consider the poor quality of the soil. It's gratifying to watch when we take our sake and go out to enjoy the evening, even when it rains." He looked up at the laborer, eyes twinkling. As he struggled to follow the old man's conversation, the drunk's face began to soften. His fist slowly unclenched. "Yeah," he said, "I love persimmons too." His voice trailed off. "Yes," said the old man, smiling. "And I'm sure you have a wonderful wife." "No," replied the laborer, "my wife is dead." Very gently, swaying with the motion of the train, the big man began to sob. "I don't got no wife. I don't got no home. I don't got no job. I'm so ashamed of myself." Tears rolled down his cheeks. A spasm of despair rippled through his body. Now it's my turn. Standing there in well-scrubbed, youthful innocence, my make this world safe for democracy righteousness, I suddenly felt dirtier than he was. Then the train arrived at my stop. As the doors opened, I heard the old man cluck sympathetically. My, he said, that is a difficult predicament. Indeed, sit down here and tell me about it." I turned my head for one last look. The laborer was sprawled on the seat, his head in the old man's lap. The old man was softly stroking the filthy, matted hair. As the train pulled away, I sat down on the bench. What I had wanted to do with muscle had been accomplished with kind words. I had just seen Aikido tried in combat, and the essence of it was love. I would have to practice here with an entirely different spirit. It would be a long time before I could speak about the resolution of conflict. So that's Wu Wei effectiveness. You sense the fullness of the arising. We are each other. There's no separate being. We are each other. How do we nurture the whole? In the instance of this particular. How do we listen to that which grows, to the way of being in the world? Not to interfere, not to be carried along by it, but more to actualize the deepest sense of the quality of our being. Deep attentiveness to what's arising now. This sound, this sensation, this feeling, this emotion, this thought. But don't flow downstream with anything. Stay with what's coming up. Stay with the universe appearing now. Dance with it. Find the meaning of your being, the quality of your being in everything that's arising. Everything that's arising goes into the quality of your being. That's what determines the quality of your being. All four of the other instruments were required for the first violin part to make sense. They couldn't make sense musically without those other four. It was too fragmented in isolation. But when it was put together with the other four, this one thing, this one event arising, it wasn't 5 scattered pieces, 2 violins, a viola, 2 cellos. It wasn't one thing, because there's 5 voices all contributing to this one event. The entryway is always very, very simple. It's just this. You fix your mind with some confidence on just this. The fullness of the quality of your being will be present. And this arising cosmos is yours to explore. It's limitless. So there's no limit to the journey, to the path. Beginningless and endless path. It's always changing, but always here, always now. Beckoning, asking for your participation. The chorus complete. So that's the Dharma talk for this evening on the quality of being. And why don't we call this talk Dance Party now at Indra's Den.